KSC presence. This deserted Turkish village is filled with hundreds of creepy Disney-like castles. Builders once envisioned Burj Al Babas as a getaway for investors from the Persian Gulf, a village full of Disney-style, castle-like villas. But that was never to be. Instead, every single one of the neighborhood's chateaus sit empty, creating a creepy ghost town in the mountains of Turkey. Traditionally, ghost towns have a past, and it usually includes a once thriving population. However, the people likely left these cities and villages when the industry that supported them left too. For instance, mills or mines used to draw workers in, but the area's economies tanked when the resources were depleted. In other cases, natural disasters, such as drought or flood, pushed people from their homes. Even something as dangerous as heavy pollution, war, lawlessness or nuclear disaster could occur, forcing an entire town's population to flee and never return. Although the story of a ghost town can be a heartbreaking one, the period architecture left behind can spark intrigue. It can also draw tourists. In Bannack, Montana, for example, state park employees revitalize their ghost town once a year. They do this by reenacting what life used to be like when it was a bustling mining center in the mid-1800s. On top of abandoned towns, once thriving commercial buildings can too become eerily empty. Photographer Seth Lawless has made a name for himself by capturing America's forgotten malls, theme parks and other structures that undoubtedly used to be beloved by the communities in which they still stand. I've been documenting the most forgotten places throughout America and listening to the compelling personal stories of people who still live in these places, Lawless wrote on his website. Their stories and experiences are part of an untold chapter of American history that needs to be heard, he said. One of the Ohio shopping centers Lawless photographed had special meaning for him, however. Randall Park Mall used to rank as one of the nation's largest malls, but it has been abandoned over time. The photographer had, in fact, made a slew of memories there, from meeting Santa Claus as a child to getting his first job in a retail store. We all remember spending time there, and for the most part it was in happier times, Lawless told Gizmodo. The Ghost Town Mall and the haunting images of it serve the photographer's greater purpose, though, as he told the Today Show. Sometimes words just aren't enough, so I started taking pictures, he said. For most of these shopping centers turned ghost towns, the desertion is due to a lack of cash flow. Perhaps an anchor business, such as a popular department store, leaves, which reduces foot traffic. As a result, other stores suffer and close until the entire mall is empty. Around the world, newer residential developments have also suffered the same fate. That is, a lack of interest from buyers or economic downturns shut them down too. China is notorious for building modern cities that remain unfilled, and there are multiple theories as to why this happens so often there. For one thing, it costs a lot to buy real estate in China, which could leave the country's new construction unsold. On top of that, some believe that builders have no intention of filling their properties, at least, not right away. Instead, they build new cities outside of metropolitan areas in case of war. That way, those forced to flee their homes have a new place to go. Of course, these cities could also lie empty in preparation for a population boom. China already has around 1.4 billion people living within its borders. Kai Siemerer, a photographer, traveled to the country after he found out about its many ghost cities, and that was his explanation for the countless empty buildings. Many of these new cities are not expected to be complete or vibrant until 15 to 25 years after they begin construction, Siemerer told Business Insider. They are built for the distant future. At present, we can only speculate on what form they will have taken when they reach this point in time, he said. One such Chinese ghost town isn't a town at all, it's a full-on city. Kangbashi, as it's called, was designed to house 1 million residents. Along with residential buildings, the conurbation also has an airport, a museum, parks, theaters and statues adorning its streets. The only thing that's missing are the people who may or may not show up to live there. Another interesting Chinese ghost town lies in the country's eastern region. Called Tianjin, the city has a very famous inspiration, Paris. Builders didn't take their vision boards lightly either, as they built the town with its own Notre Dame, Champs-Élysées and even an Eiffel Tower. Those who constructed Tianjin's French-inspired landscape in 2007 hoped that it would draw city dwellers who wanted to exchange their urban lifestyle for a more serene way of life. However, the price of buying a Parisian-style property proved too high. Today, the city remains empty, except, of course, for newlyweds who use it as a backdrop for their wedding photos. Like Tianjin, China's Thames town also draws its inspiration from a European source. This time, though, the emulated city is London. The Chinese version has its own snaking river, just like the English capital, as well as a plethora of the iconic red telephone booths. There are even sculptures of James Bond and Harry Potter. But the $800 million construction project, which spans just a single square kilometer, failed to attract the 10,000-strong population for which it was designed. Instead, it also sits eerily empty, save for the few residents and those who come by for a photo opportunity. In nearby North Korea, another ghost town served a political purpose. Next to a military-free zone stands Kijangdong, a northern settlement meant to entice South Koreans into defecting. The city, constructed in the 50s, shows the fabulous lifestyle that purportedly awaits on the other side of the border. Official reports state that 200 families live in Kijangdong. However, those who have observed the village over time have realized that's simply not the case. Instead, lights turn on and off within the buildings at the same time every day. Soldiers and housekeepers can be seen on the premises, rather than moms, dads and their kids. Still, the visuals weren't enough for North Korean leaders. They set up loudspeakers in Kijangdong too, to send an audible message to South Koreans. They would also play the sounds of military marches for 20 hours every day at full blast. One day, their neighbors fought back. They blared rock music at full volume toward the north. Eventually, both sides agreed to turn the music off for good. In the case of Burj Al Babas, however, political tension was not the neighborhood's undoing. Rather, it was the developers' lack of funds, which hit them more than halfway through the project. At first, though, they envisioned hundreds of gorgeous French-style chateaus tucked into the mountains of Bolu in Turkey. The Sero Group started to develop Burj Al Babas in 2014, imagining that their chateau-style homes would draw in wealthy investors from the Persian Gulf. Each abode would have the same aesthetic, according to the neighborhood's website. On the outer facade of the buildings, no modification shall be allowed, it said. That way, each property would have identical features. These include a curved turret, Juliet balconies and ornate details to mimic the look of a fairy tale castle. Meanwhile, inside the properties, buyers could personalize the look to their style, even if it didn't match the home's romantic, Disney-like exterior. Within Burj Al Babas, there would be plenty for residents to do, as well. Along with the aforementioned shopping center, developers promised to build a fitness center, restaurants, and meeting rooms. But the list doesn't end there. Turkish baths, steam rooms, basketball courts, tennis courts, walking trails and movie theaters would also be part of the development. Depending on the location of the home, buyers would pay anywhere between $370,000 to $530,000 for their chateau. A lakeside villa, for instance, was the most expensive option, while a corner lot cost $440,000. No matter what, though, future residents had to make a deposit of $50,000 to secure their spot. The project did indeed generate interest and intrigue in buyers from Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain and Kuwait. In total, developers hope to construct 732 of their royally inspired abodes. And they successfully sold 350 homes, nearly half of the properties on offer. Still, Construction crews blazed forward, even though they had only sold 50% of Burj Al Babas' homes. They had, however, completed 587 properties, 237 more than had been purchased already, before they ran into a huge problem. They were now out of money and couldn't continue the project. According to Bloomberg, the Saro Group, Burj Al Babas' builder, had racked up a debt of $27 million while building the development. They applied for bankruptcy protection, but Turkish courts instead ruled that the company had gone bankrupt. Clearly, there is a distinction between the two options. A person or an organization can declare bankruptcy if they are too far in debt to recover the funds they've spent. The courts will then choose a trustee, who calculates the financial assets and liquidates any physical ones. The cash they receive is then used to settle as much of the debt as possible. But the Saro Group hoped to file for bankruptcy protection, which would allow them to continue working on the development. If an individual or a company shows that losses could be recovered, with time and the chance to restructure, they can pursue this option instead. According to Mehmet Emin Yurtlan, the Saro Group chairman, Burj Al Babas deserved bankruptcy protection. The project is valued at $200 million. We only need to sell 100 villas to pay off our debt. I believe we can get over this crisis in 4 to 5 months and partially inaugurate the project in 2019, he told Bloomberg. Yurtlan also had an explanation as to why Saro Group had fallen into such deep debt. Buyers had failed to pay up. We couldn't get about $7.5 million in receivables for the villas we have sold to Gulf countries, he said. But he did add that the company would appeal the ruling, which came down at the end of 2018. For some, though, the neighborhood's failure came as a relief. Those who lived near Burj Al Babas did not like the building's fairy tale style. They felt it was too stark a contrast to the rest of the region's structures, including a centuries-old mosque, wooden houses and Byzantine-era architecture. In fact, since construction began on Burj Al Babas, the Turkish government has rolled out regulations that would prevent such a development from going up in the future. In many places, new construction now has to fit with the surrounding area, and housing complexes must be in low-rise buildings. Still, some experts believed that it was too little too late. A researcher in urban development, Yakar Abnanadena, told The Guardian, "I worry that projects like Burj Al Babas open Pandora's box, in some respects. Developments without proper planning that do not contextualize the geography and history of their surroundings have exploded in Turkey." Even Turkey's President Erdogan has pushed for construction projects within his country's borders. It seems that the bigger the infrastructure change, the more jobs it provides. But the building bubble burst by the end of January of 2019, and Burj Al Babas was just one of many ghost towns left behind by construction companies deep in debt. In the case of Burj Al Babas, it was the Saro Group who went bankrupt. But Global Source Partners Turkey analyst, Atilla Yesilada, said the entire industry was dealing with a lack of funds. It's not just the home builders who go bankrupt. The people who supply goods to those industries, those people suffer too, he said. Indeed, Turkey has taken steps to bring in more money, just as the Saro Group did, by enticing foreign investors to purchase property. The country has made it easier for non-Turkish people to become citizens. How? By loosening the financial criteria required to settle within its borders. All of this gave the Saro Group hope that their currently empty Disney-style development would soon be up and running again. Until then, though, it remains unfinished and empty, an eerie ghost town of cookie-cutter houses tucked into the tree-covered mountains of northern Turkey. Thank you for watching. And don't forget to subscribe.